So last week we started learning about the Eiruv, right? We started learning about the Eiruv, and we learned mainly about the Eiruv around the city, what we call the Eiruv, and we explained that it actually has two components in it. One is the strings, which is like a theoretical wall. It's many gates inside the wall. There used to be a company called Sun, computer company.
Yes.
And I saw on the shirt of them, in a world without fences, who needs gates? That's for Bill Gates. So the Eiruv is, in a world of gates, who needs fences, right? Because that's the idea of the Eiruv. You have many gates, and the city is surrounded by gates. So that's one part of the Eiruv. And then the other part of the Eiruv is what is actually called Eiruv, is mixing Eiruvei Chaserot v'Shitufei Mevaot. It's actually mixing everyone together and combining everyone to be one family, or one meal. Everyone share one meal. And towards the end of last week's question, we started discussing about another type of Eiruv, which is walking 2,000 amah from where you are and placing an Eiruv if you want to extend it to 4,000 amah. The truth is that I was wondering if to teach it, because it's not so practical. How often do you get to place an Eiruv? Maybe some of us have never placed an Eiruv in order to be able to walk 4,000 amah, right? And usually we stay in the city. So in the summer it's so hot. Who wants to walk beyond the air conditioner? And the winter, it's some might say it's very nice. Some say it's too cold. It's so hilly. So
place in Europe, we're not saying like a pole and strings. What are you saying?
So we'll get to it. We'll get to it. But even we don't leave the city. How often? When's the last time you went out of those strings, of those poles and strings on Shabbat? So for camping, yes. So we meet it on camping, and we do meet it every now and then. And since it seemed like last week it was an interesting topic, so I decided let's learn it this week. Although we might never use those halachot. Maybe we will. Maybe next week we will go camping and we will ask, okay, what do we do? So the Eiruv that we learned about last week, which is the strings on poles, which is built in a certain way, that allows us to carry inside the area of the strings. And if the strings tear, even if it's on Shabbat, so you will you have a problem and you can't carry on Shabbat. Okay, so you can't carry. It's not so clear you can rely on the Eiruv. Many authorities don't trust the Eiruv, and they say you can't, especially in big cities. In small towns, maybe small settlements, especially if there's mainly a fence around them, it's easier that you can be more lenient about it. Let's say if you live in a yeshuv, in an army base, so where I go to, where we have miluim, so the army there's a fence all around it. It's quite obvious you can carry in the base. Okay? More obvious than a city. Let's say you live in a small settlement. You live in not a front. Let's say in Elazar. Okay, you live in Kfar Adumim. I'm not sure if it's a small town. It's easier to say that you can trust the Eiruv on Shabbat and you can carry on Shabbat. In big cities, Tel Aviv, Jerusalem, Tel Aviv Yafo is one big city. Rishon LeZion, Nes Ziona, Rehovot. There's one road that goes from Rehovot through Nes Ziona and then Rishon LeZion. Okay, so can you carry in them? So it is a question. It's quite a big question if you can rely on the Eiruv and carry. There are many people who do not carry and don't rely on the Eiruv. And it became a common minhag that most people do rely on the Eiruv on Shabbat.
Because there might be 600,000 people?
Because of a few reasons. We won't go into it deeply now. I want to go to the other kind of Eiruv. First, there might be 600,000 people walking in a day in a city. It's a machloket. Some poskim say even if there's less than 600,000 people a day walking there, even if there's 10 people walk a day, but it's a wide street like Yafo Street, for example, that's called Reshut HaRabim. Some say that to have the poles, you have to have them close to each other, less than 10 amot, more or less approximately 5 meters. You don't know where you have it 5 meters. It's too expensive, right? I think we have it about 20 meters more or less between the poles. Sometimes even more, depending of how the topography is built. So it's not so clear you can trust in the Eiruv. There are quite a few reasons to be makel in it. But we should know it's a machloket. If you see someone who doesn't trust the Eiruv, so you understand why. And in the end, we do trust the Eiruv. That became the minhag. Maybe two interesting ideas why we do trust the Eiruv. One of them is when we have in the main roads, main highways, we have 600,000 people going there a day. Let's say Ayalon, okay, road 1. All of the people are closed in boxes, right? Called cars and buses and trains, right? That box, it's a Reshut HaYachid. It's actually, when you think about it, some poskim might say, there's a street here. The street is empty from people. There's hardly anyone walking in the streets. There's a Reshut HaYachid, a private zone, moving in the streets, but it's separated from the public zone. So if we think that to have a public zone, we need to have 600,000 people in the public zone a day, well, because it's very hard to have 600,000 pedestrians walking a day, right? Maybe in, I don't know, somewhere in Wall Street, New York, or Manhattan. Otherwise, depending according to which no, which newspaper news. Okay, so that's one reason to be maker. Another reason to be maker is that since the urban city is built so close to each other, you can have sometimes houses almost touching each other, right? You can see the street if you have a building and another building, and there's relatively a small gap in between. Actually, the city is built of many, many walls. Inside the city, you have many walls dividing the city to different parts because of the buildings and because of the different fences you have naturally in the city, because that's a city. And a big city, all of a sudden, actually, when you look at it a bit closer, is actually many, many small units of different blocks or different buildings, which is there's a wall. So that's a few reasons to be makel. Anyway, we won't go into that. We're going now to a different halacha of
meaning that you really don't need an Eiruv.
no, that you can rely on the Eiruv and trust the Eiruv, because many poskim say you can't trust on the Eiruv. For sure, you need an Eiruv. You can't carry without an Eiruv. So if you have an Eiruv and the Eiruv fell down, which happened, I'm not sure if it happens here. When we were in Memphis, it happened a few times. There was an ice storm, there was a car accident, and he bashed into the pole of the Eiruv, and a few other reasons that sometimes tend to happen just before Shabbat. Sometimes they happen a week before, and they just take their own time to fix it up. So you can't carry.
Sometimes it's construction, sometimes power line.
Yeah, if you run a power line, they're moving the power lines. So it can take sometimes more than a week, and you're without an Eiruv, and people have to know that you can carry on Shabbat. Carry or curiosity? No, okay.
Yeah. If, as it turns out, the Eiruv breaks on Shabbat.
See, you can't carry.
You won't even know.
You won't even know, right? You won't even know.
So it's okay.
You can. Is it okay?
And you can't tell
No,
anybody if you
so
know about it, right?
If you know about it, you should tell only people who you think they will refrain from carrying on Shabbat. People who you think will still carry on Shabbat, don't tell them. And the reason is that if we assume that there's no Reshut HaRabim, there's no public zone, which means, let's say we assume that one of the criteria for a public zone is having 600,000 people in the street a day. In my domain, there's no 600,000. Yeah, we're a small town, right? So according to many poskim, there's no public zone from the Torah law. There's only a public zone from the rabbinical law. And in the rabbinical law, if you shouldn't rebuke people, you shouldn't tell them to refrain from something if you think that they won't listen to you. Torah law, tell them, don't do it. If it's a rabbinical law, so sometimes it's better to be quiet. And as it says in the halacha, mutav yu shogegim ve'al yu mezedim. It's better to have a mistake than have them do it on purpose. Okay, so that's so the first Eiruv we talked about last week is about carrying. And now we're talking about an Eiruv, or different kind of walking out of the city on Shabbat. Yeah, walking out of the city on Shabbat. When was it? A few months ago, I had a question about someone had to go to hospital in Har HaTzofim. And someone else wanted to go with them to Har HaTzofim. Can they go with them or they can't go with them? That's a good question. Okay. Can they come back? That's another question. And let's say they decide not to come back. Are they stuck in the room in the hospital? Or can they walk around the city of Jerusalem, go to Mount Scopus, look around, look at Har HaTzofim and see if they can see Ma'ale Edomim? Can they walk around? Why not? Okay. So they left Eiruv. So they got already to the hospital. The patient was treated. Can they now walk around in Jerusalem? Why not? So that's exactly the topic of the day. Okay, that's the topic of the day. Yeah. So let's discuss it. Let's discuss it now.
I don't know. Do you
So
have an Eiruv map?
So Jerusalem has a big Eiruv around it, but a lot of the neighborhoods are divided to smaller Eiruvim in Jerusalem. Because a few reasons for that. One of them is that not everyone trusts the Eiruv around the whole city. It's too big, and there's also other problems in it, so they divided the city to smaller sections. And another reason, there's a few highways cutting Jerusalem, like Kvish Begin. You get on Kvish Begin on 443 and you end in road 60, so it cuts Jerusalem. If you have a main road, can you have an Eiruv when you have a main road in the city? That's questions which we want to discuss now. That's questions.
Might it even serve as a backup Eiruv if you have an Eiruv within an Eiruv?
If you have an Eiruv within an Eiruv, so it's like a backup also. But one of the reasons is people just don't trust the big Eiruv. Okay, so yeah, or is it? You can carry from one Eiruv to another Eiruv. Because
if they're basically touching.
Yeah, if they're touching, if they're touching, so you can carry from one to another. Okay, so we basic Chazal said, it actually has a base from the Torah law, but Chazal even extended it more, and the idea is Ali Yetzeh Ish Mimokomo. A person shouldn't leave his place on Shabbat. Okay, so a person shouldn't leave his city. A place of a person is a city, plus 2,000 amma. Okay, 2,000 amma is about 1 kilometer, more or less. Okay, more or less 1 kilometer. So you have the city, and then you shouldn't leave more than a kilometer from the city. That's based on the Torah law, which is an extension of Chazal.
And we're not even talking about carrying.
Without carrying,
We're talking about just
how far you can walk. Okay, how far you can walk.
Because the carrying issue is only if there's mamash string Eiruv.
Yeah. How far you can walk from the city. Okay, so you can't walk outside of your city more than a kilometer, more or less. Yeah, outside. Yeah, in the city you can walk as much as you want. Outside of the city, you can't walk for more than a kilometer. Okay, so you can't walk for more than a kilometer outside of the city. Now in Ma'ale Edomim we don't find that so much. I guess also in Jerusalem, maybe in Jerusalem you do. Can you go to the Lifta? Okay, if you live around Kiryat Moshe or Mema, there's a nice spring, the Lifta. There's the forest around Har Nof. Okay, there's the forest around the zoo. Can you go on Shabbat for a walk to those places? Let's say you aren't carrying anything with you. Okay, your pockets are empty, you aren't carrying anything. And Anan says you can go from the border of the city about 1 kilometer. Okay, 1 kilometer.
This is without making an Eiruv.
Without making an Eiruv. It will become a bit more complicated soon. Okay, we'll touch only the basic of it just because
What you mentioned, or open space within the city. So within the
so let's say they're out of the Eiruv. Out of the Eiruv. Okay, out of the Eiruv. Maybe some of them are in, but let's say it's out of the Eiruv. A common case could be you're camping or you're taking Airbnb. You're taking an Airbnb in the middle, Australians say in the middle of Whoop Whoop. Okay, I'm not sure if there's a middle of Whoop Whoop, that sounds Australian. Anyway, you're taking I think it's Australian. Also American, what do Americans say in the middle of Norway? Okay. So, what is it? So you take an Airbnb in a small, rough area, and there's nothing around you. Can you walk on Shabbat out of the Airbnb? You're in the woods, can you walk out of the Airbnb? And the answer says you can walk for 1 kilometer from your Airbnb. It's in all directions. So you have from the borders of your Airbnb about 1 kilometer. When you have a city, when you have houses which are close to each other, it's about 32 meters or 64 meters from each other. So you can, from the group of houses, you walk 64, and you can walk about a kilometer, 2,000 amma. Now here it becomes a bit more complicated, and we won't go into all of those details. The way, if you have a city, you draw a square around the city. Okay, so if the city is circle, you draw a square around the city, and from that square you measure 2,000 amma, and then you draw another square around that square. So obviously, in the end, many times you'll be able to walk much more than 2,000 amma.
Because if you're in the corner.
If you're in a corner, if you're walking towards the corner, the square you draw towards the direction of the world. Okay, so north, south, west, east. That's how you draw the square. So we are going to go into how you draw the square, but there's such a thing as you draw a square. You draw a square, and many times it becomes much more than 2,000 amma. I think I told you last week, I have a friend who teaches for bar mitzvah. He has a really mesirut nefesh. He'll go, he'll walk on hot Shabbat days. If he has a bar mitzvah boy, and he'll walk quite a long time to get to his shul. And sometimes it will be much more than a kilometer. It might be even 2 kilometers, sometimes even 3 kilometers out of the city. How could he do it? So one of the ways you can do it is by exactly measuring the city, seeing the shape of the city where we were. Then 1 second, I'm actually walking maybe 2 kilometers, but because of the corners and because of the shape of the city and because of the way I'm walking, it's in the borders of a square and another square inside it.
So let's say the boundaries of the city were not exactly even, and they weren't either a circle.
So
You
that's what
could
it.
draw a square around
You draw a
the
square.
entire boundary,
Yeah.
regardless of what the shape was
Yeah.
inside.
Yeah, regardless of shape. And let's say even you have, maybe easy to show here. So let's say I have that's a city. I have one house sticking out here. Okay, one house or a few houses sticking out here. The square will go here. So that one house or a few houses will expand from the squares. So again, we don't meet the halachot so often, but once when you know what to ask. At least we know what to ask. Okay, that's the goal, to know what to ask, to know what to look for. Okay, so we can walk only 2,000 amma, that's even without carrying anything. Chazal said that, beforehand, how do I decide where's the center of the 2,000? I said we have 2,000 amma to each side. Where's the center? Where is the center of the 2,000 amma? Where you are? Where you are on the beginning of Shabbat. Okay, so where you, in the halacha language is makom shekovea shvita. That's where you park at the beginning of Shabbat. Okay, we park at the beginning of Shabbat. That is where you have the 2,000 amma. If where you park at the beginning of Shabbat is a city, all the city is like a small place, halachically, and then you have a big square around it. If you park under a tree in the bushes, so you have 2,000 amma to each side from where you are. Chazal said that a person can decide to park somewhere else. If I'm physically now here, I can decide if I'm parking underneath the palm tree, which I know is about a kilometer from here. Okay, so I can decide before Shabbat, it has to be done before Shabbat, to park in a certain area. And the best way to do it is another way to do it, which we won't mention now, but the best way to do it is to be there physically before Shabbat, leave there some food, some bracha, and some text that you say, you won't mention it now, and you put the food there. It needs to be there at least for the beginning of Shabbat, and that's where you are parked for Shabbat. Okay, so by having your food in one place, before we started the shir, we were talking a bit about Birkat Hamazon, a bit about benching. Food is a very important part of people, right? Food is what brings us together many times. Food is what brings people together. It keeps us alive, right? But it's also more like it also keeps us alive. Also, we say, I am where my food is. Okay? My house is. Many times remember my grandmother's I don't know, cookies or something. So food is. So when we place the food in a specific place, that now becomes our center of Shabbat. It should be relatively close to where I am, in the kilometer to the city, inside the kilometer to the city. And then I have, from that place, I have 2,000 amma to each direction. Okay, from that place, I have 2,000 amma to each direction, which means I can go 4,000 amma, 2 kilometers to one side, but nothing to the other side. So I gain one side and I lose one side. Okay, so if someone has a bar mitzvah in the morning in the east, and I'm not sure, a bat mitzvah in the afternoon in the west, he's stuck. You can't be in two weddings at the same time, right? You can't eat a cake and leave it home. So you have to decide where he's camping, one side or the other side. That's the idea of Eruvei Techumin. Okay, that's called Eruvei Techumin. And in the halacha, it's called Tchum Shabbat. Okay, the measurement of the borders of Shabbat, where I can walk on Shabbat. You want to talk a bit about it? It gives us a feeling of, on the weekdays, we always move. Okay, we move from one place to another. We travel, right? We go to work, we commute to work. Maybe with Zoom, we commute from our bedroom to our dining room with people who work on Zoom, so don't have to put pants on, right? They can stay with the pajamas. But really, the world is by commuting. And Shabbat says, stop commuting. Even if you aren't carrying anything, be in your place where you are. Don't commute. Now,
What if a city is just one long road?
so a city is one long road. Ariel, take Ariel for example. Okay, Ariel, maybe now it changed because they expanded Ariel, but Ariel used to be like a long and relatively narrow city. So you have that city, and you have a square around it, around the city. And you have a long and narrow square. Yeah, you take the furthest house. Efrat is also very long. Now, there are a few details, which we aren't going to go into all the details. What happens if there's a big distance from one end to the other end? You do also then do a square, you do a different shape. We won't go into that. What happens if you have a city of like a half a circle, and there's a big distance between the two edges also? Do you do a square? Don't you do a square? What happens if you have two very, very close settlements to each other? For example, Kfar Adomim and Alon, right? Are they considered as one or aren't they considered as one? That's also a big question. I need to check on the map and measure to see how it is. They might be considered one, maybe not. I'm not sure. I need to check. But it's just ideas that if you camp once, so if you go to somewhere else, things to check and things to ask. So the goal now is things to ask. Hey, what do I do? What are things to ask? So sometimes if we have a city, a few small towns, a few small villages, and they are close to each other, so they can all be considered one. Another important thing.
About continuing to see houses.
Yeah, if the houses are close to each other in 64 meters to each other, so that's still considered one. And also if, depending also on the shape of the city, let's say if you have one city like this and another city like this, so sometimes they might be considered one, depending on the shape. Another halacha, which that actually might be relevant maybe in a few years. Can we walk to Jerusalem? Okay, so can we walk to Jerusalem? Mashiach will come, Azariah will become a Jewish settlement, and the question will we be able to walk to Jerusalem on Shabbat or not? I think it's not such a far walk. If you walk from Azariah, I think in an hour drive, you can be in the Beit HaMikdash, an hour walk. Yeah, I think more or less an hour walk, you can be in the Beit HaMikdash, right? If you walk by Azariah. Yeah? You never tried?
Yeah, we used to actually, these guys are newbies. I
Okay.
lived here over 30 years, and we used to go to Yerushalayim 2 hours a week.
Walk or drive? Drive. Okay. Right. There used to be a guy here in my dream who used to walk through the, yeah, and they say it's not. Oh yeah, before the peace, so it was actually peaceful to walk there, and it was quite fine, right?
It wasn't that good.
Okay, that's what they say. Okay, that's what they say. I'm new here. That's what they say. There used to be a guy who used to walk for Azariah. If there's an Eiruv, if you have a few cities, okay, close to each other, for example, Mevaseret and Yerushalayim share the same Eiruv. Okay, so Mevaseret and Jerusalem share an Eiruv. So you can walk from Mevaseret to Jerusalem because as soon as you have an Eiruv we said it's like a wall. Having a wall around the city makes all of the city to be one. Even if there's a big distance between the houses, you have a wall around the cities, right? So it's a wall of gates, but all of the city becomes one. So
this is the Eiruv.
So if you have an Eiruv, the strings, okay, the Eiruv of the strings makes a city to be one, and then you can walk from one end to the other end. Doesn't matter how big the city is, because you have it's all the city has one fence around it. It's like one small area.
Currently, Sarah has its own.
It has also its own roof, and it's also connected. The room are also connected. A question which I'm sure for most of you it won't be relevant. In the army, I had this question came a few times, and it's just interesting to learn it. I said it today. There is more of a shiur, which we won't meet the questions so often, I guess. Let's start from the easier question. When I was in the Navy, so a few times the soldiers used to come back on Shabbat. Okay? And we say that the place where you are on the beginning of Shabbat, that's the place where you are. Okay? And from there, from your place, you can walk only 2,000 amah. Okay, maybe you should. If I go from here, from my doing to Jerusalem by mistake, okay, without not for mitzvah, not for saving people, I can't leave my area. Okay, but if it's for saving people, if I'm a doctor, if I'm a soldier, if it's to go be for a sick person, I can walk around. But we said that where you are in the beginning of Shabbat, you have 2,000 amah from where you are. Now there's a soldier in the base on a boat. Okay, he's on a ship, and at the beginning of Shabbat, he's a few miles from the land. Okay, he's quite a few miles from the land. Comes Shabbat, then in Shabbat night or Shabbat morning, they get to shore. The ship, they connect the ship, and can he get off the ship on Shabbat? Okay, can he get off the boat on Shabbat? Or he has to stay on the boat on Shabbat. Okay? Now here comes another halacha which we didn't learn. We said everything depends on where you are in the beginning of Shabbat. I should add another word. On the place on the ground where you are in the beginning of Shabbat. Someone who's in the boat, a ship, a ship is much more than 10 tefachim from above the soil, above the ground, right? So he's floating in the air or in the water, but he's not on the ground. Only when he touches the ground, that's when we say, okay, from when you touch the ground, now you have 2,000 amah. So when a soldier is on the boat, for the whole Shabbat, he's on the boat, right? He's nowhere. He doesn't have any place. So he can be anywhere. When the ship gets to the ground, he docks the ship, and he gets off. As soon as he gets off, now the area where he is, that's where he counts his 2,000 amah to each side. So the answer is if the soldier, a person went on a cruise. I had once a question of a person going on a cruise on Shabbat. And they were becoming more frum. Said, what do I do? My wife wants me to go on the cruise. She said, I have to go on the cruise with her on Shabbat. But I know there's no Chilul Shabbat from our aspect. The cruise gets to the boat, to the shore on Shabbat. What do I do there? So he can get off, and he has 2,000 amah to each side. Because you can't get off when there's a small distance between the boat and the ground. But big ships like that have the sea is very deep where they dock the right. So there'll always be this. If in the olden times, the boats used to go quite close to the shore, right? And many times there used to be less than 10 tefachim between the bottom of the boat and the sand. Today we'll never do it, right? The way the ships are very deep, all the ports, right? They're very, very deep. So the people on the ship don't have any place where they are because they're much above the sand, much above the ground. Okay, so only when they get off to the ground, only then they start at 2,000 amah. A more complicated question can be someone who flies on Shabbat and he lands. And he lands on Shabbat. Okay, why? I'm not okay. There was a flight delay. Okay, there was a flight delay. He was trying to give it. There was a flight delay, and he landed on Shabbat. Okay, he landed on Shabbat. Okay, it can happen. Okay, he landed on Shabbat. Now, as soon as he touches the ground, so from there he has 1 kilometer, right? The problem is that the plane drives on the ground much more than 1 kilometer. Yeah, it takes so from where the plane touched the ground until the terminal itself is much more than 1 kilometer. And that could be a problem. That could be a problem. A solution could be but Yeah, but as soon as the plane touches the ground, it's as if he touched the ground. Yeah. So also I thought maybe it's more than 10 amot, but that's also in the poskim. Okay. As soon as you touch the ground, so as soon as the plane he's on the ground,
And don't find.
if all the airport like Ben Gurion, if all the airport has a fence around it, so all the airport is considered as one place, and you can get off the plane and stay in the airport or maybe sleep there until Shabbat ends. Okay, so that many airports have a fence all around them, so you can get off the plane and go to where you need to go in the airport. But if the airport does not have a fence around it, he should stay on the plane. He should stay on the plane.
Take off.
Now, usually they won't let him to stay on the plane. They tell him to go. Okay, so he'll get off because any time he'll get off the plane and but stay as close as possible to the terminal and that. So again, it's questions that we usually don't meet, but the idea of this show today was just to get us a bit interested and see what we can learn and next more practical. Don't fly on Shabbat. That's the answer.